Awesome.
Somehow it's already July 8th. This is the July 8th Tinderbox Meetup. And here is Michael Becker.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the meetup. Our typical format is to go around the room, have new people introduce themselves. We have a small group today, so we know everyone. We then dig into our particular individual projects, ask questions, problems, any kind of ideas that we're facing. And then if we have a theme, which we don't today, we would dig into that. So let's just go around the room. Everyone, hope it's going well. What new projects, activities are you all working on? What do we want to demo and talk about today?
We're in the last stages of Tinderbox 9.6. So if there is anything people need that they haven't seen backstage yet, or something that you think I know is not right, but you're not sure I know it, drop me an email.
Okay, awesome. What other projects do we have? Dave, what are you guys working on lately?
I've been working on stuff that didn't call for Tinderbox, and I'd rather be working on projects where it was at least closer to what I needed.
Okay.
Hope to be back to that in August because I'm going to do a replan of my computer security course.
Got it.
Then.
Got it. Yeah, I've been working on my course planning too. That's been fun. We should circle back on that. I've developed some new templates on that.
And also, I'm going to drop a link on the chat that tells you about controlling the recording layout, which I think interacts with the settings that the meeting organizer can control, but you don't have to be that. I'm not exactly sure, but there's a link about it. You can figure it out later.
Got it. All right.
Awesome. I'm just blogging away like it's 1999 and being thankful that Tinderbox still works the way I expect it to for the most part. Awesome. And makes it easy to maintain a blog and post pictures and do the things you want to do without too much fuss or signing over your privacy and your life and everything else. So
okay, perfect. And Peter or Erwin, Art, what's going on with you guys?
Well, I've actually been steeped in numbers for a while. I'm just dealing with some bunch of business stuff and legal stuff. So it's a lot of databases and some publishing apps for me. But one of the interesting things I've been able to do is jerry-rig a system. So I have a employee database in Tinderbox where I put detailed notes and I'm utilizing attributes and the like. But on a regular basis, it's more practical for me to run the actual database and add, new ID numbers or little bits of evidence and things like that that are building up. I'm finding it more practical to number. Basically, just regularly export a CSV file and suck it back up in Tinderbox, and it reconnects automatically. Because I can just delete all the contents of this import bin, and then re-import a fresh CSV, and it just links up to all my other existing notes beautifully. So that is really great. And that's pretty much it for me right now.
That's a really nice little trick. One thing, if you want, I'll give you something. I'll show you something I've just done recently about that. You might like it. Detlef.
Nothing really new with Tinderbox. I had to do a lot of testing stuff, and I used Tinderbox to write down my test cases and then export them and send them to the customer. But there's nothing new or interesting in it. I'm just don't have at any time doing any new stuff with Tinderbox. It's just manual work, and test cases can be very boring.
Got it. Yeah. All right. Erwin, Peter, or Bruce, what do you guys got going on? Okay, not much. That's good to know. All right, and for me, I've just been doing a ton of work. So lately, I've been trying to extrapolate the work we did with Jerry on the brain concept and move everything I'm doing into one Tinderbox file and to experiment with how that's going on. And it is actually going on exceptionally well. And what I found, however, was right now my file's not that big. Let me see. Current stats are my file is currently 707,000 words, 12,000 notes, has about 9,000 agents and roughly 8,000 edicts or so. And then within those, there's probably anywhere from 2 to 3 to some cases 20 lines of different action code or script that would be running in each one of those rules or edicts. And so what I was finding was that the file was generally grinding to a halt. No fault of Tinderboxes, but just I was asking it to do too many repetitive operations. So basically I was having it do go update this note, whether or not it needs to be updated or not, every few seconds. And that was just a total waste of processing power and analytics process. So the way I went about solving that, and I can go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see it. And again, I don't think, obviously the vast majority of people will not have to contend with this when they first start using Tinderbox. Although, given my personal experience here, what you'll find is it's pretty easy to go back and retroactively address performance issues, if and when you do experience them. So what I did was I created an attribute called is dormant. So I'll just show you here. So I created an attribute called is dormant. And I essentially set is dormant. I can spell. And I created this attribute is dormant, and I set its default value across the entire file to true. And then what I did is I went through every single one of my prototypes and basically in every single one of the prototypes wrapped all of the action code for every prototype with the is dormant equals false. And so I basically am saying, if it's dormant, I might not actually want to update this. If this is dormant, then I want you to run this action code. If dormant is true, then don't. And so by doing that, what I was able to do is effectively turn off every single block of action code that was running across my entire file. And so now Tinderbox is just dealing with a bunch of true false booleans when it's processing each note. Now I could have considered turning the rules on and off, but if I did that, then the dormant check wouldn't apply, wouldn't work. So that's allowing me to essentially reduce a lot of the processing of all of the different notes, which turned out to be really, really nice. And the performance of the tool came back. And then what I was able to do is then turn around and manage this is dormant concept only on those projects that are actually active. And that really improved the performance of my file significantly. Yes, Peter.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that I've been using Tinderbox this week on a LaTeX typesetting project. And one of the things I did was originally I'd started in Texifier. And when I brought the text into Tinderbox, it came in as styled text. And I wanted to lose all the styling. So I sent an email out to Mark Anderson, asked him if there was any way to do that using a stamp. And he suggested $text equals $text.plain. And it works like a charm that automatically resets the font size and all of your visual attributes back to the standard notation. And the other thing that proved really helpful was setting up a Tinderbox prototype for my note headers. And the prototype automatically adjusts which LaTeX sectioning command to use based upon where the note is in the document. So if I start at top level and I drag a hunk of my typesetting code down lower, it will automatically go from, say, section heading to a subsection as it gets dragged around. So I don't have to be changing note prototypes. The single prototype just automatically figures out where it is hierarchically in the outline and applies the appropriate LaTeX command to that level of heading, which is really.
Well, you want to demonstrate that for us?
I'll have to set up a test file to show you on that one.
Okay.
Maybe I can do it while we're waiting, and I'll get back to it a little later in the day.
All right. Okay, so anybody have any comments or questions for Peter? Did that idea of the text.plain make sense? Are people familiar what he was talking about in that context?
So it sounds really interesting to me, but I would love to see what that output looks like.
All right, let me pull it up.
Latex
I'll do it real quick. All right, let me pull up let me grab some, create a quick test file here and show you. And then I can go back to explaining what I was talking about. All right, so let's say you had a text file here, and let's go grab some formatted text from somewhere. Where if I can grab some formatted text, go to a news article maybe. Give me a second to find some text. All right, so let's say I am randomly grabbing a bunch of text off of a web page. So I just went and did a search on privacy controls on Google. So you see, I've got, let's say I've just randomly grabbed a bunch of text on a web page, and you want to remove all of this formatting to make it easy. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You can either go up to the, and let me move these out of the way so you can see this. You can either go up to the, essentially you can select all text, and then you can go up to the notes menu or format menu, hit style, and modify standard style, standard font, and reset margins. And that will reset and remove all of kind of the rich formatting out of the text. Now, what Peter is suggesting, based on his recommendation from Mr. Anderson, is this, as you could say, text equals text.plain. And apparently what this will do is do that resizing for you as we speak. So if I now go ahead and apply this stamp, let's see what happens. Right? So you see that automatically will remove all of that. Now I've lost the links and things like that. So there are other ways to handle that. But that's one way to kind of get rid of all of that formatting and get you back to a, actually, it doesn't look like I've lost the links. Is that, no, it looks like I have, yeah. So I lost the links in that context. So that's another way to do it. Now, if we go back here though, and just hit, let me grab the text from the web page again. You can also use hotkeys for it too. So if I go like this, and hit Control A, hit T. So if I hit like Shift Option Command T, that's the way I've got it set up. That will remove the text, but I'm still getting the go to Google. But let's see what happens if I apply or stamp that way. Do I keep the go to Google? Yeah, the go. So if you're doing the text.plain, that removes everything. If you're using just the, if you're using the shortcut version of doing that, you can do this with, come on, create a new note now.
I mean, you could also paste the result to another attribute, or even keep the formatted text if you choose, or anything like that.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, you could. So there's other ways, but if you have a bunch of text like that, you're gonna wanna, you might want to keep it in text. So then again, if you're using the shortcut keys, you can keep that link still there too. So that's a way of handling and bringing in text in and out from web pages and such.
Okay. I thought basically that you had some more power with latex in terms of the layout or
Well,
how,
he was just
how the
talking about trying to get the high level formatting out. Now, what else were you discussing, Peter?
The other thing that I did was set it up so that as I dragged notes around within the outline, the sectioning command used by LaTeX would be automatically updated to reflect where the note was in the outline. Normally, you have to explicitly have \section, and then in curly braces, the name of the section to start a section. Subsection is the command to create a subsection, and there's a different command for each level in the outline, which makes it a real pain when you're dragging things around and doing heavy editing. So instead, what I do is I have Tinderbox calculate the depth of the note and then work out automatically what command to use based upon the depth in the note. And I used a dictionary so that I could go from the outline depth to the sectioning command to fill in.
Got it. And that's very similar to the templating strategy I've applied, not for latex, but just generally. Go find my templates. And Peter, hopefully you'll be able to, as we're speaking, you'll be able to pull together a quick little demo for us.
Yep.
But you'll see here when what I do is very similar to that. Is I've developed, and we've talked about this at length before, but when I apply my main template, Tinderbox will automatically create an outlining depth depending on where that note happens to be. The nice thing with the way I've implemented it is it can be the outline starts with whatever note that's selected becomes the 0 title, and then everything below it. Because if you're not careful, if you don't have some automation, it's going to start from the root of the file as the top level of the report and then down. And then that will let you control your outlining depth for your report. So Peter, will be cool to see how you've implemented that in a different way.
right.
So Art, any other questions around that?
No, I was just interested in seeing, the possible, I mean, okay, so the way I'm understanding it is all the sectioning is required for the final view of the document, whether it's in preview mode or whether you're going to output it to web or print.
Yeah, so what in latex is different than like a typical HTML, but they function in a very similar way. So let me go ahead and I'll just demonstrate it here in this file here. So let's go ahead. I create a new file. I'll call it report. And I'll apply that report template. All right, so let's say this is my report. And then under here, I've got, section 1. Section 1. And we'll call it section. Sorry, my typing is bad here. Come on. All right, and then let's say you had another section of the report like this, and this is 2, and this is 2.1. Right, when you go and render that, what Tinderbox is going to do is you'll notice here in my file, if I look at the export, the way I set up my template is Tinderbox is automatically saying like this is a heading 1, this is a heading 2. So heading 1, heading 2, heading 1, heading 2. So what Peter's doing is he said he's done the exact same thing, but rather than outputting H1, H2 tags, he's outputting latex.
Yeah, and he also has the prototyping working in such a way that he can drag these notes around, and it on the fly changes their section.
Yeah, correct. So let's say I drag this underneath here like that.
Yeah.
And then I go and do this. Now, if I preview the report, you'll see it automatically changes for me as well. And if I come down here, you'll now see that this one is now heading 4.
Right.
And again, what you want to be, what you want to do, and you want to be careful with when you're doing this. Let's say I've got I don't want to say careful is the wrong term, but one consideration is, let's say we'll just call this folder, and let's say now I'm not at the root.
Okay.
Right. when one of the things you want to be considering when you're leveraging your template is my consideration has been your report should start with whatever the top level file is. So let's say I actually want my report starting here. Well, in that case, this becomes the heading 1, and now that's the heading 2. So that's really important that as you're moving your report around your file, you don't want your numbering scheme being based off of the top level root of your folder, but rather where you're starting within that report.
I'm getting it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so I'm doing it for HTML. What Peter's figured out is how to do it and build a template for LaTeX.
Got it. Okay.
And and then along those same lines, you could also be exporting, as we've talked about before, you could be exporting Markdown, you could be exporting JSON, you could be exporting any file format you want. And that's one of the beauties of Tinderbox is it doesn't have to be HTML. It's really any file format.
So your reports actually can look pretty decent, usable for presentations or output for any purpose you might want.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And so my reports, if you can do it in HTML or if you can do it in LaTeX, you can do it, or Markdown, you can output anything you want out of Tinderbox.
And then with these posters, one will be able to intersperse the notes with posters as well.
Correct. So posters will also become part of your output.
Fantastic. Okay.
Right. Because the poster will just be, what you do is you set your template and you say, just display this poster, display this note as a poster. And so that therefore would then render in your output.
So this feels like it's phenomenal, but it's also very bittersweet because by the time I'm able to get my hands around this, I'll probably be at the end of this particular project. But but maybe not, in which case I can just quickly adapt what I'm doing. And essentially I'm doing these things across 2 or 3 programs. I can sort of see myself doing it all in Tinderbox, which is very promising. So thanks so much, you guys.
Well, and maybe we had a side call on that, but I similar to you, I had a buddy of mine working on this fairly significant industry research report, and I got it completely transferred into Tinderbox in less than 3 hours.
Fantastic.
With him having never used it before.
Wow.
So
that's a wonder. Yeah.
Certainly doable. Now, obviously, he doesn't know how to write the templates and write action code and any of that, but getting him up and running and functional took less than 3 hours.
No, and what is great is that it actually gives me a perfectly good excuse to put those skills and bring them all to the fore and use them. So yeah, this is looking very promising. Thank you.
Yeah. And then we can just move that around. So that's what you're able to do, and that it's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, I had a random question. If anybody knows the answer to it, do you know a way to fish the specific URL of an email message out of mail?
Specific URL from an email message out of mail. Well, let's look.
Yeah.
You mean the storage?
The Apple script to do it?
Yeah,
yeah, there's Apple script that will do it. Hold on and I'll grab a snippet for you.
Oh, sweet. Okay, thank you. Because there's a program called Edison Mail that offers it in the menu. That's an email.
You can also just drag it over into Tinderbox and it comes in right here.
Yeah, but I didn't want the email inside Tinderbox. I just wanted it to be in my mail program. And be able to reach it from Tinderbox.
Well, I mean, again, I see what you're saying, but you can then just delete it too, and then that opens up.
Or it retains the link or something. Okay.
But when you drag it over, that's an immediate way. So if you don't want to retain the text, just delete the text and keep the link.
Perfect. Okay, I never even thought of that. Okay, thanks. Great.
And you could actually set up action code that says if you dragged an email over, apply this template, call it email, and have the action code delete the text.
Delete the text. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much.
But there very well may be a hotkey. The other way to do that is hook mark is another way to do it. But there very well may be a is there no menu item in mail to grab the email link? Let's look.
Yeah, I haven't been able to sort of get hooked on Hookmark. I mean, I've tried, I keep looking at it from various angles, but I don't know. I prefer the
No,
way it is
I
right
agree.
now.
I agree.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it doesn't look like there's not. You might be able to. There might be a keyboard Maestro hotkey you can do too if that's not available in Mac Mail. But that's the quickest. Just dragging the email over is the quickest way.
Right. No, fantastic. Thank you. Perfect.
All right. Any other thoughts, comments, questions that people want to talk about before I go back to the optimization stuff?
Okay, I think I'm ready to share my screen now. I stripped out the actual project, so I'm down to minimal test case display. So let me share. Okay, are you seeing the screen now?
Yeah.
All right, now let me talk you through this. First off, we have some LaTeX templates. We have a template for, well, originally I started off with having a separate prototype and template for each one of the level commands. So I started off by having section command, subsection command that would hard code which command to use. And then I realized I was wasting a lot of time doing that, especially when I started heavily editing the structure of my project. So then I went to the notion of a generic sectioning item. Now, a sectioning item has a rule that will calculate the logical depth of where the element appears in the document. Now, the catch here is that in some documents, you want to be starting at the level of a book that has parts and has chapters and has sections in it and subsections. The full LaTeX hierarchy is book, part, section, subsection, 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 and paragraph. So it runs down and you have to use the correct command at the right level. Actually, there might not be a sub. It might only be sub. I think maybe just subsection. I'd have to look at the documentation. But the point is, the system has to have a separate command for each item. Unlike environments, in LaTeX, there's a notion of environments. And the idea of an environment is it's a region where something's applied and it starts with a formal begin command and a formal end command. Sections don't work like that. In sections, it's sort of like HTML, where a section is implicitly closed when you start a different level section command that's at that level or a higher level. So a chapter gets closed if you start a new chapter, or if you start a new part, or you start a new book. A section gets closed by another section, or by a chapter, or by a part, or by a book. So you have these individual floating around commands that have to be changed based upon how deeply nested you are in the document. That also means that if we're doing a document that we don't want to be starting at the book level, we have to make sure that we're not just looking at the depth and the outline, but we have the notion of a logical depth so that we can tell it ahead of time that we want to make sure that we're starting 2 levels in, so that we're starting with sections or starting with chapters, as opposed to starting with books, which is the default. So you can't just use the outline depth. Otherwise, you get the wrong command generated because the commands start higher than you might necessarily want to start. So what we do to get around that is to have a level bump field. And the level bump field in my system tells you how much deeper you want the next level of nesting to get. And I also want to be able to have other elements, maybe just like a comment that appears somewhere in the outline that has nothing to do with sectioning. So the level bump for something that's unrelated to sectioning is 0. And it doesn't matter how many level bump 0 items you might have nested between the start of your document and your arbitrary depth. If it doesn't have a level bump field, it doesn't affect which sectioning command gets picked. So we have a logical depth attribute and we have the level depth attribute. And at the very start of the document, we adjust the level depth with a negative number if we want to make sure that we're starting somewhere other than the book level. Then we take the sum of the ancestors of the note add up all of the level bumps to come up with the number that's going to be the logical depth. So that's how that part works. Then sectioning item in the template, we get the sectioning command. And the sectioning command is a text attribute that we compute based upon how far in we are at the logical depth. And that's where we have our little lookup table that tells us what command corresponds. So coming over on library, we have the sectioning level as a function in Tinderbox. And as you see right here, we have the dictionary. Level 1 is book. Level 2 is part. Level 3 is chapter, subsection, and all the way through.
Beautiful.
The other thing that we want is to not have to think about what that offset is going to be. So we have another user command, another user attribute in which we put the name of, let me show you for the top level. Let me go to the prototype. I hadn't thought out how to present all this optimally before today, so I'm not as smooth as I would normally be. Let's see, we have a start sectioning with attribute. And the start sectioning with attribute is going to be one of those heading level values. Then in that same dictionary, we have the name of the level and we have the corresponding offset. So going back here to show you the section level dictionary, if you look in our dictionary, if you started off with the word paragraph, that corresponds to level 8. So we can figure out what our start level should be based upon what the attribute, what the level of the chosen name is going to be. I should show you the user attributes. That might make it a little bit clearer. Okay, so here are the attributes. We have level bump, which is a number defaulting at 0. We have logical depth, again, a number defaulting at 0. Section starts with, we have suggestions for book, part, chapter, section. And based upon those, we adjust what logical depth the root element of the document is going to be starting at, so that when we add new levels to it, it will wind up with a level number that corresponds to where we want the document to be starting. So if we're starting at the section level, it would automatically be starting off 1, 2, 3 down. The first section would add 1 to 3, and it would become section. If you nest something under it, it will then pick up the parent section level plus the level bump, which will be 1, and you'll come up with the number corresponding to subsection. We look that up, and we then apply it in the actual export template so that our LaTeX export template for a sectioning item will look up the value of the sectioning command, and we come up with the correct title. We have an update sectioning command that does a lookup to get the section level, runs the function, and applies the correct offset to us automatically. The other real big thing I did was I set up an auto export file template. I found that
Peter, before you move on to that, can you show us what the output would look like?
Oh, sure. Okay. Here's what we have. If we have topic, here we have main matter. It starts off with section. Its output would be section topic 1. Then we have nest underneath it section 2. So we get subsection section 2.
Okay, and just go, and let's pause here real quick. No, go back.
Okay.
So I'm going to make distinctions between what I showed and what you're showing here. So what I showed was the output as HTML tags. What Peter's showing is the output as LaTeX tags. So LaTeX is looking for the /section, and then the topic 1 being the title that would be done in a file. In HTML, that would be like, heading 1, the name, open heading 1 tag, the name, topic 1, and then close heading 1 tag. So that's kind of the comparable distinction one here. And what's really nice about what we're demonstrating here is the flexibility of Tinderbox to be able to export any any output you want. You know, as I was demonstrating, as I go through Pandoc, I was demonstrating HTML output. Well, Pandoc does latex too, but the point being is that's how you're getting the different types of output. And so this
Also,
we're
the
demonstrating very
purpose,
similar mechanics.
yeah. Also, the purpose of the star there is tell LaTeX that I want it to be an unnumbered item in the outline. If I didn't have the star, it would be a number 1, and then the subsection would be a number 1.1 as the number. But here I just want to have an outline in LaTeX without having numbering, so I use the star versions of the sectioning commands.
So in other words, these different types of publishing methods have their own syntax. There's HTML as a syntax. There's LaTeX as a syntax. And what Peter's doing is demonstrating how he's implementing basically the LaTeX syntax.
Right. So now let's say we wanted topic 1 to be a sibling of topic 2. Now, if we go and look at the generated LaTeX, we have them both listed as sections. If we want 1 to be under 2, just drag it over here in the Tinderbox outline, go back. Now we have section topic 2, subsection topic 1. And we can do this to arbitrary depth. We can have items that aren't sectioning commands in the middle, and they won't affect where the nesting goes. So let's say we had, instead of just some text, we had, let's say, another topic that should have been a topic. And here's even more text. And maybe we dragged some of it in so that it was actually styled in blue. And maybe we had something else that was styled. Let's see, font, bold. Yeah, okay, let's say we had something bold. And I decided I actually want this to be part of my outline instead. So I set my cursor right here at another topic, and I'd split the note. Now that I split the note, it comes up as an ordinary note that doesn't have any kind of logical association with it in the system. We want this to become a subtopic of topic 1, maybe. And here's the text that we want with it. So let's go and split again. Okay, now this is another note proper that would be the actual text going underneath our new topic. Now, as you notice here, the name of the new topic picked up the text that went under it because of Tinderbox's automatic naming convention. So what I've done is I've had a heading stamp, and the heading stamp will have the effect of trimming the title of another topic to just the first line, so it loses any text that came along with it. And now we have a content stamp, and I run the content stamp, and the content stamp nukes the styling automatically. And now if we look back up here in the exported LaTeX code, we now have subsection, another topic, and here's even more text. The little extraneous space there doesn't really matter because the space will get ignored by LaTeX when it looks at it. So it'll basically get eaten by the subsection. It'll sort of trim the ends of it. So that doesn't really matter as far as the generated output will be. I could probably tweak that to make it work a little bit better. Then the actual stamp to do that is a stamp named plain, which applies text.plain. And we have the heading stamp, which sets the prototype to a sectioning item, sets the text to nothing to get rid of the residual text that came in before we split that note. And we set it to paragraph 0 of the name. The content stamp will simply set the prototype to generic LaTeX, and it applies, again, the plain action to the underlying text to get rid of any style that might have get picked up if it got pasted in from a web page or something. And this could get moved around up here to the top level. And everything automatically reorganizes for us on the fly to provide the correct LaTeX commands. The other real nice feature that I have in this system is a auto export. And the idea of the auto export system is to eliminate the need to go to the file save dialog box. And what auto export does, let me show you the commands associated with it. We have auto export as a Boolean, which determines whether a note is automatically going to be written off to disk. We have the auto export path, which tells us where we want it to be written off to disk. We have the auto export input, which is going to be populated by the result of applying the template of the note to the note. So that it's the same as if the regular built-in system was generating the preview text to have it written off to a file. And then we have the auto export command, which is going to be a Tinderbox action to run a shell command. And that gets done by an agent. And let me show you the agent here. Auto export files. The agent itself looks for any notes that have auto export true, and its action is to run the auto export command on the auto export input, which is to say the expanded template for the note in question. The auto export command itself, let's see, I think where we have that. That's like in a rule somewhere. Let's see, sectioning item. Let's see, auto export. Okay, auto export input is the exported string of this using the export template, and I can use just a standard HTML one. It doesn't matter because I'm not using any actual HTML commands, but we have to replace the backslash character with a double backslash character so that when it gets absorbed by the output template, the final generated file winds up with a single backslash. So instead of having to manually double the backslashes so that the escape backslash gets written to the file, this system automatically does it for you, so you don't need to think about it, and you can just use backslashes freely. They'll get doubled and then stripped out and then dumped out into the correct file. Now let's see, where did I have the command located? Tinderbox. The command itself is a file system call to cat dumping in the input to go into the actual file. So we basically pipe cat into the auto export path with the final generated text that should be going into the file. And I'm not sure where I have that hidden in here. Let's see, was that in one of the stamps? It's buried in the system somewhere. Ooh, I have 2 copies of that prototype. Ah, here we are. Okay, here is the edict that sets the auto export command, because that only needs to be basically set up once, or very rarely if you change the auto export path. So I stored it in an edict as opposed to putting it in a rule. So it will run very rarely. And the command is the concatenate command in the Mac shell, piping it into the file, which is the auto export file. And then we also set up the rule on the fly so that it will automatically generate the correct text to be piped into the command. Now, once this is all set, the agent itself, the auto export files agent, will watch for any changes to the generated output of the file. If it's an auto export file, it will run the export command, which will pipe it through the Mac command line, and the result will be putting the actual content into the file. So when I'm doing this in editing, I'll have Texifier open in one side, and it will be constantly seeing the live updates of the Tinderbox outline and generating the final typeset source off of that.
That's amazing.
So
Question, Peter.
yes,
Way back when you, and I missed it because I had some technical problems here, you were referring to dictionary.
Yeah, the dictionary lookup
Dictionary is extremely problematic term.
Okay, Tinderbox dictionary data type.
Okay, and is Mark Bernstein or Michael Becker, a Tinderbox dictionary data type is JSON format? Or have you juiced that up, Mark?
No, it's just a key pair.
It's JSON adjacent. Jason separates the elements of a dictionary with commas. We separate them with semicolons.
I'm going to redact my comment. Okay, thank you. But it's
Well-
basically fundamentally it's a key value pair that went. So Peter, there is a JSON.
And in this case, I have a single dictionary to keep it all together. So there are two contexts in which this command gets used. It can be fed, input can consist of a number, in which case I'm interested in what the actual command to write should be based upon the number. And this will tell me what LaTeX command to output. So these dictionary entries for 1, 2, going down to 8 correspond. So this first block of them corresponds to going from a outline level, a logical outline level, to a typesetting command. Now, the second half of the dictionary, because I want to have all the data in one place, so if I was editing it, I'd make sure that I didn't get the two dictionaries out of phase, and fortunately I can use a single dictionary, goes from a section name to an outline level. So that's what we use when we're setting up the note to figure out, when we're setting up the document initially at the top level to figure out what outline depth we should pretend that the note is at, so that we'll be incrementing starting at that depth. So if we were starting with a book, we would treat the first root node as being level 1, so that the next level underneath book is a part. So the second depth entry of the outline would be nested appropriately, and we'd be going starting at parts logically. Or in my case here, starting at section. So you start off at level 4, add 1 to 4, that gives you 5. Then you take 5 back in and look that up, and that gives you section as being 1 in from the initial nesting level. But the dictionary made it a lot easier. Originally, a previous version of this had a ton of if-then statements, and it was a nested nightmare. And just using the dictionary allows me to take the two lookup tables, fuse them into a single lookup table based upon what the key value is, and call the same function in two different contexts. Again, one going from text to a number, the other one going from a number to text.
Good enough. Thank you.
Awesome.
And the auto export system makes it a dream to be editing, because then the typesetting program sees the changes as soon as they're made without having to do round trips through the menu system.
So the moral of the story of all of this, for some of those that may not know all of these ins and outs and the different language treatments that were raised, is Tinderbox can export your content out in any format you want. Now if you don't know how to do that, or if you are unclear, you ask the forum for help. If you don't know what cat and export to string means and all these other elements mean, that's what the community's for. So hopefully from what you're getting from this lesson is, if you've got notes in Tinderbox, you can parse them, break them up into any little elements that you want, and then recompile them and export them in any format you want. And the community is there to help you do that.
Oh, and also we have a little highlighter I put in to highlight LaTeX commands that will basically look for that backslash with the command after it and braces, and color that so that actual typesetting commands embedded in the context jump out at you very cleanly. So that's just like a little icing on top.
Very cool. Thoughts, comments, questions for Peter?
I think it's all very outstanding, and I also love seeing, it's great. Like all of you use Tinderbox in such different ways, and it's beautiful to see like the thinking process all then turn into how you deploy the code. And
so, Peter, I do have a question. Can you go back to your prototypes?
Sure.
I might have missed the beginning, but why the multiple prototypes, the subsections, section? Did you move away from that, or?
Yeah, I got rid of that. That was just actually legacy code that doesn't have anything to
Got it. I just wanted to make sure. So you're doing it all with one template, which is
yeah, I'm doing it all with one template.
So
I might in the future want to go back and set it up to automatically change those icons just to make the section level jump out. So I could have the icon get updated on the fly too as I move it around, but I really didn't have time to play with that. That would just be, a little graphic truffle on top. So I left the prototypes there just so I'd remember which icon choice I'd originally had for each sectioning level.
And for those that don't understand the terminology, it's not icon, it's badge in Tinderbox.
Okay, bad. Sorry about that.
Badge. Okay. Why don't you stop sharing screen? I want to pop over to what Erwin was just talking about. Let me take control back.
Okay, there you go.
So, Erwin, you were talking about wanting to do something similar in the chat. You were talking about wanting to do similar between DevonThink and Tinderbox with Markdown. And this might be not exactly what you were talking about, but this is a nice demo that we talked about months and months and months ago. But you'll see here, similar to what Peter was saying, you've got all these different kinds of headings. You can move stuff around if you wanted to. So I can pull these headings out if I wanted to. And then if you look at your templates, you can have, where's the template here? You can have the template actually executing Markdown instead of LaTeX or HTML, like we were saying. So now if I look at this article here, you'll see now it's exporting out your entire file down as Markdown notations. So yet another example of you really can truly get your stuff out in any format you want. And everyone, is your microphone still dead? Did you have any other comments about Markdown that you want to talk about? Let me see. I think his microphone's dead. Okay, cool. All right. Before we move on, any other thoughts, comments, questions about these different kind of templating structure outputs? No, yes, thoughts, ideas. If not, I can show you guys something else.
I'll just make one comment as I'm watching this. Yesterday I took kids to the plant observe, and this is a little bit like that.
Sorry, you're
enjoying watching space. Am I breaking up?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm outside and we have new Wi-Fi. Can you hear me now? Any better?
Yep, better.
Yeah.
Reduce the bandwidth, right? Anyway, I'm just amazed at what you're demonstrating. Peter, you once again, I mean, when you do these demonstrations, it's like a magic show. I mean, I love watching it. So I just want to chime in and compliment you. I mean, the work that you do on this, Michael is the master of ceremonies and also like Penn and Teller, pulls out his own tricks, but it's just wonderful to see, the breadth and the variety of what people are doing. So I'm just in awe.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? I mean, if not, we can demo other things that we've been talking about. A couple ideas. I wish, actually, I can show. I wish Detlef didn't have to leave. We could walk some of the stuff he'd been doing lately. But two things we could show. We can talk about another piece of optimization that I worked on this week. We can also go through the mileage calculator that we've been playing with over the forum. And I think if you don't mind, maybe we can do both of those. Does that make that okay with everybody?
Sure.
All right, great. So let me share my screen again. And so as I was saying, if you're running, and I'll just go and show you the output for those that might not know. If you're running, so like right now, this file is running 9,000 rules and 8,200 edicts. And as I was mentioning before, I want it running all of these different rules on edicts in every file. However, I don't necessarily need it running every line of code on every file. And I really only want it to be running on files that are, pertinent for being updated in the moment. So a couple of new optimizations I pulled together in the last couple days was one is adding the is dormant attribute, and I demonstrated how that is being implemented just across the board. And this was a nice fix because I was running into a mass optimization issue where my entire file was grinding to a halt. So I was able to go through every single prototype, add the is dormant equals false. The default is dormant equals true. And so that effectively turned off all of the action code for every note without being destructive. I then could go incrementally going back to individual projects and, you know, flip the is dormant on and off to true or false for individual projects and get back to work. So that was a really nice optimization. The other one I did, which was kind of a fun optimization that I did recently. Let me make sure I got it on this particular note. And many people may not be aware of this, but on Tinderbox, there is a attribute that's currently not in the display. But it's called, so if I go here, you know how you have rule, remove, edict, etc. And kind of a hidden attribute is on visit. And what on visit is a legacy from story space. And what that does is when you visit a note, it lets you trigger some action code. So you'll notice here on the a lot of my notes, I put in on visit as equals false. So what that means is when I visit the note, meaning when I click on the note, it turns the is dormant from true to false and then runs its action code. So let me give you an example of that as an optimization. So let's say I go ahead here and I create a new event. And for the vast majority of people, your files probably are going to work fine. But if you get, like me, you get some really larger files. So let's say I have an event here, and you'll notice how by default I have is dormant is off. And you'll note, and let's say I'm now going to go in and say, okay, who's speaking at this event? You know, Michael Becker is speaking at this event. And let's say Art Kiram is speaking at this event as well. And what's kind of fun with the optimizations with my files is, let's go, I don't think I have Art in my database. So let's go ahead here and do a search just to make sure. Fine. Okay, so you'll see I'm searching my Tinderbox file and I don't have Art anywhere in my database right now. So, you know, nothing hidden up my sleeve is basically what I'm trying to say here. So when, and I'll go, this is a meeting. And this is my new event. And so essentially what I'm trying to do here, and you'll notice, and I don't know if you caught wind of that. Look what happened. Let me redo that again. Just so you can see what you're doing. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a new meeting, call it new event 2, and we'll give it the p event attributes. Okay. And I'm now going to go here and I'm going to type in the speakers I want for that event. And you'll notice that these speakers aren't being linked to the event. Nothing's happening because the action code is dormant. If we look at the action code, it's basically saying if is dormant is false, then run this code. And then when you're done, set dormant to true, because I don't want this to be constantly running to the background. Once it's done its update, it doesn't need to keep doing it again and again and again. Does that make sense? Pause right there real quick. Yes, no? Okay, I'll assume silence is a yes. So now watch what happens. Because I added the on is visit equals false action code, what this means is when I click away from the event, nothing's happening. You'll notice there's no linking icons in the event. This note is still dormant. So any action code running on this note is dormant. But the second I go and visit it again, Tinderbox automatically flips the on visit, turns the is dormant to false, that then triggers the action code, and then automatically links Art and Michael Becker to this note. So that way I'm getting much more granular control as to when and how the action code is being triggered. Yes, Mr. Bernstein.
Yeah. How do you decide whether to put an action in an edict or on visit?
Well, well, on visit's just that one-time trigger when I visit a note. So the question I think you're saying is, how do I determine when it's in a rule or an edict?
Well, no, because edicts are useful for things that for constraints that you want to enforce most of the time, but you don't mind if it's not enforced every 3 seconds.
Yeah, and so for me, I've not gotten that. I've got the is dormant working on the edicts as well as the rules. Right. So
okay, that's a good.
Right. So that way, and I can make it a little bit more granular, but I trigger the rules immediately and then I let the edicts run whenever they run. Right. So, but if and now here's a couple other things that that you might have seen in the forum that we've done thus far. So this was a really killer optimization. So again, let's go back to the very beginning. 16,000 rules and edicts running at any given time. Within that, hundreds, literally thousands of different lines of rules and running at any given time, grinding my M1 Mac to a halt. Going in, adding the is dormant, stopped all of the unnecessary chaff. File starts working perfectly again within minutes. So then I'm starting to think about then how do I get it to trigger so I don't want to have to manually remember to flag this is dormant on and off when I visit a note. So having the on visit lets that automation trigger for me automatically. Now, the other thing that you'll see here, which is kind of fun, is you noticed I added this person, Art Kerman, and it automatically created a note. It automatically tagged that person as a speaker. And now if you look in here, click back into Art, you'll notice what it also did is it automatically parsed Art's name into first name and last name and populated those fields. So let me show you how I did that. And what's really important about this is I want that name parsing to only happen once at the time of the creation of the note Art. I don't want that ever happening again because maybe I've done some modifications or tweaked it or all that. So how do you go about doing that? And so if you go down to the code here, and this is all code you've all seen before, but this was a neat little trick that Mark Anderson and I were playing with just last night. So what happens here is I created a variable string called vNewNote equals ID string. And what happens then is when my tool, when my code is looking to go create, it's going to say, does the note Art? So and I look at the path. And so the path is going to equal the container and the note name that I'm feeding to the note. So what I'm doing with this note is I'm saying, feed in all these variables. The container I want, and let me show you the event container just so you can see the variables I'm passing here. So if I go to p event and I look at the rule, you'll see what happens is I'm telling Tinderbox, look at the speaker attribute. And for every value in the speaker attribute, I want you to pass it the container people folder. And I want you to give it the type, either contact or the type, either speaker. And this is kind of an interesting thing too. Let me go here and show you. These are the people I'm having speak at the event. But let's say Dave Rogers is not a speaker in the event, but he's like the marketing manager working with the organizer of the event. And the organizer of the event, let's say, is Eastgate. Right? So I'm able to capture all of this different information about the event. So now when I look at the note, I've got Art as a speaker, Michael Becker as a speaker, I've got Eastgate as the organizing company, and I have Dave Rogers as a contact related to this event. So now I'm able to use link types too. Now, Dave Rogers, Michael, and Art are all people, but the context of these people within this event are different. This time, Michael and Art are speakers and Dave is a contact. So I'm able to use link types then too to distinguish the difference between is this person or what's this particular person in this context relationship with this event. Now, if I go back to what I was showing you earlier, and again, pause me if this doesn't make any sense, but I'm kind of helping you see my logic, what I'm doing here. So as I pass in the variables into the create note, Tinderbox is getting, okay, I've got a new name, Art, as a speaker, and I want that speaker to be put into this container. So the name Art Kerman is the X here. It's the name of the person I'm passing to Tinderbox, and the prefix is either entity or person, and the container is the container that I want that note placed into, in this case, the people's folder. So the nice thing about doing this, and you'll note, I have a whole series of different types of people in the system. I have speakers, contacts, organizers, leads, owner of tasks. I have different labels, and that's something David Eddy would appreciate. Different labels for people in different contexts. And so then I say, all right, Tinderbox, does the path, does the container, does the note Art Kerman in the people folder exist? And so that's what this is saying. And if it does not exist, Tinderbox returns back a null value, which tells me that Art does not exist in my file. Which then means, okay, if v note equals nothing, then I want you to go through the process of creating that note, Art. And then if the prototype that I'm passing to that node is a person, I want you to apply the prototype that I'm passing to the note, whether or not it's entity, person, etc. And then I'm saying, if that node is a person, I want you to apply the stamp parse person name, which I'll show you in just a second. And then one other thing I've done is I also want you to capture the source of the note that I've created here. So let's go look at that Art note real quick that's now been created. And you'll notice down here, I tend to not have source displayed, but I can show you what I'm doing with the source. I don't want it there, sorry. And the reason why I do this is if and when I do copy my notes between Tinderbox files, every note when it gets created, it says what note name triggered the creation of this note, Art, what date was it triggered, and what Tinderbox file triggered it. So now if I copy this Art note to say another Tinderbox file, I know what Tinderbox file they originally created that note Art with, and what note within that Tinderbox file created it, and on what date. So that way I'm able to kind of keep track of that thinking as well. And then let me pause there, and because Dave Rogers has a question. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, I gotta unmute. So looking at your library with the list of functions there, and this is kind of a meta question. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to create sublevels within the library container so that you could segregate different functions according to what they're doing? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I've got here's my folder for the Google Matrix libraries.
Okay, because that is just a long list of functions.
Yeah. No, it's fine. And what you can also do too is you can actually have functions within functions. So you could have one note. If I wanted to, I could put every single one of these functions in one note and call it function this, and then down here go function, blah, blah, blah. Right? You can do that too. Whoops. Right? So this is one function, and this is one function. And so Tinderbox will look at a note and will read any number of functions in a particular note, or any functions within the functions library. It all just depends on the way you want to manage it.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that these types of notes don't have to exist at a specific level within the Tinderbox file that you can.
No. As long as it's in the library and it's got a thing called function in there, Tinderbox is going to pick it up. The one thing that you want to be careful with is not having functions of the same name. So, and just to be really clear, it doesn't care what the name of the node is. A function is named right here.
Okay.
Right. So you could have a different note name, and I'll show you an example of that.
Show me on FNQ'd hashtags.
All
so
right.
let's
where
the note name, scroll down a little bit, move your cursor down. Stop. That guy.
Yeah.
And then the hashtag is the same as the note.
Well, I name them the same just because it's just helpful for me. But
I'm just saying they're both misspelled.
But here's another example. F speaker link and update.
Mhm.
Right. So with my speaker work, I've got my S speaker linking. This says I want you linking these speaker notes to this item. Here's another one, speaker update. So once I've done the linking, what I then want the function to do then is to say, now that they're linked, I want you to go then pull all of the relevant information from that link note into this note. So here's an example of a function note that has two functions running in it. And the reason why I do that is now these are more tightly coupled for me logically.
So and you created the inbound link to Art as a speaker because if you visited Art on your thing, you want to see all the events that he is linked to. All the things.
So you'll see Art is now linked to 2 events. Now let's go to this one. Let's say on this one, and I've got other functions that are automating this. So let's say this function is now Dave Rogers is the speaker and Art is a contact. Right now, what you're going to see is now now because this is dormant, it's not going to run. As soon as I click away and update it, it's going to be another on visit, and that will trigger it. And then that's going to process you as the speaker and Art as the contact. And then I've got an unlinking function that does it automatically now because Art's been removed as a speaker. Art got removed as a linked speaker automatically.
I'm an outbound link.
You're an inbound link into the event. So logically for me too, any people coming into event goes inbound. And now if I go look at you, you're outbound into meetings.
Okay.
So you're going into meetings, and when you're in a meeting, you're going, and when I'm looking at the meeting, you're inbound into the meeting. From you, they're outbound. You're outbound into that meeting.
Okay.
Right. So this is a way I've been able to optimize the linking and unlinking of notes, labeling, so I can see here this guy named Dave Rogers as a contact in one event and is a speaker in another. So I'm actually able to distinguish you between your role with a particular activity. And then that also drives a tremendous amount of analytics for me in the background. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you was this parsing of names. And this became really important for me. So let's say in your email address, foo@bar.com. Okay. So in 10.6, not to disclose any secrets, but just so we all know, Mark has implemented this new email capability. And what I've also done and what he's also enabled in this new capability is a new attribute called email template. Okay, so I don't actually have one here. So let me go ahead and demonstrate. On this particular note, I've not applied it. So let me show you.
I'm getting dizzy.
Yeah, sorry. So here's my email template simple. So I'm going to apply this. Let me just do this to people everywhere because I'm going to want to have this all the time. Okay, so I've got a template I call email template simple. And now let's say, actually, this is you'll like this as I'm doing this demo. This is cool. Let me go back to the art. So if I go back to art, so Dave is foo@bar.com, and Art's email is going to be bar@foo.com. Okay, because part of what I'm trying to do too is optimize my efficiency of interacting with people. So if I go up to these events and now I update them, no, where'd they go? Where did I put those events? Well, if I've lost them, let me go find Art Kerman again.
You should create an agent with recent notes.
Yeah, I should, but yeah, we can. Come on. There we go. Oh, yeah, okay, they're down here. So you'll see, might not have done it in this one. All right, so actually this is interesting. Let me just show you here. I'll edit this one on the fly because I don't have it. Contact email. So I've got it set up now. I may not actually have it in this one. Okay, I don't have it in this one. I'm going to change this from an event to a meeting. And now you get the similar stuff. Okay. And in just a, oh, and then let me update that one. Okay. In a couple seconds, what's going to happen is it's going to process and populate. Oh, and these are, and I'm in a meeting now. Let me refresh this. Sorry. This is how you can see you get different things. So because here's a different way. So in my meetings, they're not called speakers or contacts, they're called participants. So let's say in this meeting, I have Dave Rogers and Michael Becker now participating in this activity. Now, if I click away, Dave Rogers is now going to be considered a participant in this meeting. Okay. And you'll also see what's happening is Tinderbox is now automatically pulling in people's companies' names that are associated with that. And then if I add the, how did I do that? Another note. So let me go back to, and I've got other notes that are automatically pulling in email addresses.
It doesn't clean up your links though.
Maybe not on that one because I'm intermixing metaphors as I'm speaking here. But you'll see now I've got you as a participant in one meeting, a speaker in another, and a contact in another. But here's the cool thing that we've now done. Because we now have this foo at bar and this icon here, when I click on this, that's automatically going to pull up an email addressed to you. And this is my one request, Mr. Bernstein, now that you, per the beginning of the meeting, I could say, let's say now in your note, Dave Rogers, I go like this. I know how I did it. And I say email, contact Dave. Right. And so I've got another template I call email. And say I'm going to send it on this day. And the recipient of this email is going to be Dave Rogers. Art Kern. That's the one I want to. And the subject is Tinderbox. Okay. Now that I've done that, what Tinderbox is going to do is it pulls both of your email addresses into this note. And so now when I click on this, you both get the email address. And here I'm going to put in some text. I'm going to say, yeah, Lorem Ipsum. And remember, if I showed you earlier the need for me parsing the first name, last names, part of the reason why I put that in is now here's the body of the email I want to send you guys. And I've got my email template that's set up, says, hey, Art and Dave, here's the text of the email, send the email. And Mr. Bernstein, the one request I have, if this is at all possible, I'd love to have my subject attribute populate the subject line of the email. I don't know if that's at all possible for 9.6, but that's a request.
It's item 4063.
Awesome. All right.
It's on the map.
Awesome. So now, guys, you can see you're organizing meetings, you're organizing events, you're scheduling emails, you're parsing people's first names, you're getting this massive CRM tool for basically doing everything. And then what I can do is I then can organize all of those people, much like what we talked about earlier, in the way either with LaTeX, Markdown, or HTML output, you could generate a report that says, here's everybody involved with this event.
Well, then you're going to have to do the on visit export and then attach the exported thing to the email.
Correct. Whoops, we just lost Dave. He'll come back. He must have edited himself. So, sorry, Dave, you're back. You're on mute.
I don't know what happened, but I see the next evolution in this is that you will have Paul or Peter's automatic export on visit, and that report will be an attachment to the email that you've automatically generated. So Mark Bernstein, you're going to have to figure out how to wire up that attachment function to the email template.
Actually, that's really easily done, and we can probably do it without bothering Mark. The other
attachment in the template.
Yeah, you can actually do that. I do that all the time with AppleScript. But let me show you this page 1. Page 2.
Peter's got a trumpet going in his hand raised. So
Yeah, let me show you this real quick before we move on. Here's another thing that I've been playing with as well, much like what we've been talking about before. And there's a bunch of different strategies and thinking that you need to do depending on the type of if you're using Pandoc, if you're using just HTML export, if you're using different citation styling and all of that. One thing similar to what Peter was showing about in the way he was doing his automated export. And again, back to both Bruce and Art's point about different styles. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just that there are different methods of doing this. So if I go here, you'll notice here I've got a file that's called create draft. And basically what this does is this says grab all the stuff about this particular note you have. And then what I want you to do is I want you to then go process that and create a draft for me. So now watch what happens. So when I go ahead and apply that stamp, create draft, that will then go through and actually create a drafts folder for me and give me a draft of that note. And so now I've got the compiled report of that file all in one single note. And so now I'm able to export that entire file out as just one note. And then when I export that out, and you guys have seen this demo before, but when I export that out, I can now print that to Pandoc. And that gets automatically dumped. That's now automatically dumped as a report into my onto my hard drive. So there's so just some very cool things that you can now do with everything that we've been talking about. But long story short, I just wanted to guys show you how you can do optimizations within Tinderbox to parse names, optimize your notes, create, leverage this new email functionality that's coming out, etc. Peter, your hand's been up for a while.
Yes, I was wondering, are there any action codes that would let us read to and write from the Mac clipboard?
Yeah. You leverage, it's not necessarily action code as much as you can use the CB paste commands. You basically use you run the CB. I had it somewhere. You run the paste command. I can find it. Let me see if I've got one actually in this file. I think it's paste. I have it. Yeah. Yeah. So if you run this command, run command pb paste, that copies whatever's on your clipboard into a file. And you'll notice what, and you
what
notice
I'd like to be able to do is I'd like to be able to send a notes attribute onto the clipboard and set a notes attribute from whatever's on the clipboard.
Yeah. And and I'm not doing that with attributes, but here you'll see I'm doing that with text. I'm saying copy the text and throw that into an attribute called the text. I'm then saying go out and create a file with the export file name. And now I'm saying paste the body of the export file name into the text.
Ah.
So that works really well. So essentially you can use Tinderbox now to create individual files. And like in Erwan's comment earlier, I want to work in Markdown. You can use Tinderbox to create individual Markdown files on your hard drive for every individual note or as one consolidated note into your Markdown templating format using this methodology.
Very nice.
Yeah, so we got about 4 minutes left. We've covered a lot. Just to summarize, the key ones was kind of this optimization to make sure. And so what this does is that makes sure that once the note actually is created and exists, any action code you're running doesn't get run multiple times. It only gets run once. Oh, the one thing I didn't show you, that's what I wanted to show you. The one thing in here, this parse name this was actually kind of fun in playing with it, is I figured out, let me pull up BB Edit to show it this way. And we'll use the last 4 minutes to play with that. So one of the really powerful things with Tinderbox is, so let's say you've got Michael, spell my name right, John Becker. And I'm going to call myself John Bruce Becker, because I want to demonstrate something particularly. So let's say that's the person's name. And parsing names 100% accurate is like brutally difficult. But you can get about 99%, 95% of the way there. If you think about up to the first space is the first name, after the last space is the last name, anything in the middle, just park it into a middle name. And that's part of the reason why I needed to make, for that last 5%, I only needed the parsing to only run once. Because if I got it wrong for like some European names, I want to be able to go manually fix it and then not have the parser re-optimize it. So if that's the name, and then I open up the BB Edit Playground. By the way, anybody using BB Edit, it's got this regex playground that is just awesome. Let me come on. So here's the BB Edit Playground. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to grab example of this regex and demonstrate what's happening and what Tinderbox is seeing. So what Tinderbox is seeing when you look at this regex, and I don't actually need these parentheses here, is it's saying within the brackets, it's saying, go grab me everything from the beginning of the line that's not a space. And so what it's doing is grab me everything up to the first space and only give me the first name. So that's allowing me to parse the first name. And then this regex here does the exact same thing, but now because it's the $sign it's here, is doing the exact same operation up to the not, give me everything that's not a space up to the first space, but starting from the end of the line. So that regex is giving me the last name. And then this simple regex is giving me all the chaff in the middle. So, you know, in other words, essentially grab everything between the first space and everything between the last space. And that's what this is doing. So that's what it's giving me there. And so I'm able to apply these three, you know, when I create a new person note, I say, go grab the name, populate the short title with the name, populate the full name with the name, and then parse that name out into first name, middle name, and last name.
Is in Asian naming cultures, is the family name is first and the given name is second?
Yeah, you could. And then what you do there is in a Boolean, you say, if it's, you know, if this is an Asian name, Boolean, swap the script, do it that way.
I'm guessing. I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, I don't know. And then, and I don't, you know, and I could, then, but that's again, the beautiful thing with Tinderbox. Once you start learning whatever your pattern is, you can, you know, much like my is dormants and my parses this and parses that, send these emails to this and that. Once you learn your own pattern in your own life, you can instruct Tinderbox how to work with those patterns. All right, it is exactly 10:30. So thoughts, comments, reactions by what we've kind of gone over today?
I might
Great session, great session. Learn a lot.
I might use a dictionary to put down last names and check that to try to figure out what the name format is. So if the first name was a name that the dictionary of last names had in it.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a whole.
And guess which way to go.
Yeah.
Great session, guys. Great session.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Bernstein, you're on mute or something. You can't hear you.
Yes. I'm away next week, but the following week, July 22nd, we have John Ashwell from Bookends, which will be lots of fun by special request. We'll talk about citation management and customer support, which he is something of a legend. And at August 5th, we have Joel Chan. And Michael, can you introduce Joel Chan?
Yeah, so Joel's a professor academic, and what he's done is he uses Tinderbox for his own personal stuff. but then he leverages Obsidian and an open source version of Obsidian to do collaboration with his co-authors. So he's going to demonstrate the interaction between Obsidian, an open source version of that, and Tinderbox, and how all of those different tools work together. It's going to be wickedly cool. It's a really,
Great.
really experience.
Great, terrific.
And you talked about there
Also
being,
working on getting Keith Blunt from Scrivener.
yeah, I was going to ask you about that, the Scrivener date. Did we get that nailed down yet?
Not yet.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Super fun. See ya. Bye-bye.
Yeah, fantastic.
good
Bye.
stuff. Thank you.